Our final story, did gays ruin marriage? 20 years ago on May 17th, 2004, hundreds of couples lined up outside of City Hall in Cambridge to make history. They would become many of the first LGBTQ plus couples legally married in the United States. The ceremonies were thanks to Massachusetts Supreme Court case, Goodridge versus the Department of Public Health. That was in November 2003. So gay marriage was first okayed in Massachusetts before it was okayed nationally. And this was in 2004. One of the couples I have, which is married couple Ellen Wade and Maureen Brodoff and their daughter Kate. They're at the Arlington Street Church where they were married 20 years before, and you can see them if you're watching the YouTube channel. But there were certain negative predictions that came out about same-sex marriage. And see, it's like same-sex marriage wasn't even considered a possibility. And through some legal maneuvers and a lot of activists pushing, it started to happen. And a lot of people didn't think it would happen. And we could go on through this. But I remember this negative predictions. I mean, people were running around like their hair was on fire and the world was going to collapse. Noah was going to have to build another ark because God was going to destroy the entire earth. We were all going to turn to salt. I remember these things. It was dire. There was the institution, these were the predictions. The institution of marriage would be destroyed. The religious opposition, Mormon Church was a primary person in opposing things. They actually sponsored a legislation we'll talk about. They thought that it was going to destroy religion. Same-sex parents were going to harm their kids. Same-sex marriage would abolish the roles of husband, wife, mother, and father. Same-sex marriage would lead to polyamorous marriage. Same-sex marriage, I heard this one a lot, same-sex marriage would lead to marrying pets. I'm not kidding. No, I heard that one a lot. And same-sex marriage will lead to an unraveling of society in general. In fact, some of the religious professionals on TV at the time were blaming big weather events like hurricanes on same-sex marriage. I'm not kidding.
I'm dead. What?
This is real. Go back 20 years and you'll see it. Lots of footage of these people doing this. And so imagine being gay in this world and just in hearing these people. No one thought for a I mean, no one, the religious people and a lot of the straight people, but how is, you have to believe a lot of things, like God's a very destructive and hateful being, if you will. But this all started the same-sex marriage ball rolling. In fact, when I was in 2004, I attended one of the very first weddings with a good friend of mine from school that I had gone to school with, and it was in 2004, and we traveled to Massachusetts for the wedding, and I even gave the toast, so I was proud to be a part of one of the first weddings. But then, as things came along, I live in California, and we had a very infamous proposition that happened. This was Proposition 8. Proposition 8 was the Protect Marriage Act. The Protect Marriage Act was a very desperate and scary proposition. Voting for Proposition 8 supported the constitutional amendment. So that's going to define what the law is. It's a constitutional amendment to define marriage as between one man and one woman, and reversing a state judicial ruling that at the time had legalized same-sex marriage in California. So we had same-sex marriage available for like a little brief moment, and then this proposition came along to try to wipe it out completely. California Proposition 8, do you guys have any idea? Do you think the Californians would stand for this and vote for this, or do you think they said no way?
I have no idea.
I have no idea what I would. I feel like California is one of the most forward kind of states that we have. That I don't think it would go with it, but we do have some crazies too. So
we had a lot of crazies at the time because it passed 52%. 7 million people voted for it, and 66,400,000 people voted against it. So it was about a 3-point spread, a 4-point spread. So that in elections, that's sizable. But it was very sad to say. And I remember going into my neighborhood, driving through my neighborhood, and nearly every lawn, this is in Huntington Beach when I was, where I grew up, which is a very conservative place. And I went and nearly every lawn had a Yes on 8 poster. And I would say the majority of my family members voted for this proposition. I was horrified.
That's scary.
I was horrified. And because it was such a hateful proposition, but they all thought they all believed those myths that we talked about, that marriage would be destroyed. It will lead to marrying pets. It will lead to polyamorous marriage. It'll lead to the unraveling of society. They truly believed it.
But my whole thing is like, even if all that was to happen, how does that affect them? They're not marrying the pet. It's not affecting their life at all.
They thought it would be, because a lot of people said it would water down. If you gave them the same rights we have, then our rights would mean less.
So we're not human.
That's right. Well, that is what they thought.
Well, if we weren't, then how did God make us if they're so religious? God wouldn't have made us if that was,
Well, then you get into all the people who believe that it wasn't God, that it was a choice and all this stuff. And I like to joke with people like, why would I choose to be hated and discriminated against and have to fight my entire life? Like, why would I choose for fewer rights, to have my own family reject me? Why would I choose that? Oh, no, it's a choice. And then, then I have to say, well, if you believe it's a choice for me, do you believe that you chose your sexuality? Were you attracted to someone of the same sex? Is that what it is?
I wouldn't doubt it.
And that you made a choice? But the reality is, it's not a choice. Proposition 8 was eventually overturned. Just so you guys know, it was ruled unconstitutional by a federal court on different grounds in 2010. And although the court decision did not go into effect until 2013 at the conclusion of proponents' appeals. So it stayed in effect for a long time. But in 2013, the ball was already starting to turn. And then we had the case 2015, Obergefell v. Hodges, which made same-sex marriage available across the country. And this was a Supreme Court decision, which currently is, some Supreme Court justices are saying, please bring it back because we'd like to reverse it. So it's interesting that we get rights, and we're now in an atmosphere where we're starting to have some rights threatened to be taken away, or as in the case with Roe v. Wade, some rights taken away. So it's an interesting world we live in at this moment.
You would think we'd be going forward in time, but here we are.
You would think, but we actually have an experiment here because if let's say we were to take it away, we have 20 years to tell us, were the critics right after all? Did gays ruin marriage? So Rand did a major study. So the Rand Corporation is a nonprofit research organization here in California. It's in Santa Monica. They do a lot of defense contracting. They're really a very major, super, super well-respected research organization. They do some of the most rigorous scientific and social science research, as well as military research, technological research, some other things. They're really well-respected. It's the top of the top. They're a nonprofit research organization. They paired with UCLA, which they often do. I worked at UCLA doing research, and we often worked with Rand in different ways. So they analyzed 96 published or soon-to-be published research studies on the effects of same-sex marriage. And they conducted a new analysis as well. So they not only looked at 96 old studies or even very recent studies, but they looked at a new analysis. So they conducted new research as well. You don't usually see this duality. You usually see either they're going to analyze all the old studies or they're going to do a brand new study, but they did both. They conducted the new analysis and they drew upon multiple national data sets to evaluate how changes in marriage policy in states relate to changes in marriage rates, divorce rates, cohabitation rates in the general population. They also analyzed attitudes toward marriage in young adults. They wanted to see, does this really change things? And they started to look at the effect of these same-sex weddings. So the RAND study actually found some key findings. Now, this study is I put a link to it in our YouTube page. It's a 200-page study, so there's no way I could go into the depth of these findings, but I'm going to give you the top-level key findings which answer the question, did gays ruin marriage? Well, the evidence review revealed that for LGBT individuals and same-sex couples, their children, and the general population, the benefits of access to legal marriage for same-sex couples are unambiguously positive. So there wasn't even a negative thing in these studies, which was kind of mind-blowing. You rarely see that kind of straightforward clearance. But let me go through some of the top-line findings as well. When states legalized marriage for same-sex couples, the physical health of LGBT individuals in those states improved. The physical health improved. They had better access to health care. They started to care about each other. We know people that are in marriages live longer and have healthier lives. They look out for each other. State levels of rates of syphilis, HIV, and AIDS fell significantly. So it became a control mechanism for syphilis, HIV, and AIDS. Same-sex households in those states experienced more stable relationships, higher earnings, and higher rates of homeownership. And sexual orientation motivated hate crimes and employment discrimination against LGBTQ or the LGBT individuals declined. Key findings continued. Children of same-sex couples also benefited when their parents were granted access to legal marriage, and state-level adoption rates rose after marriage became legal for same-sex couples. So the kids did great. The kids did much better.
They benefited.
I think this is amazing. When knowing your parents are legally married, and of course, when you're a kid, and how do you explain my parents aren't married when you're a kid? But now they don't have to explain that. When you're a kid, you just want to fit in. No evidence was found of lasting negative changes in public opinion as a result of granting same-sex couples access to marriage. And nationally representative polls show that more than 70% of Americans now approve of marriage for same-sex couples. What does that tell us? 70%. Now remember, a majority in California voted to outlaw it. That was 20 years ago. Is it because we're having younger people? I don't think so. It's because there's a change in society, and what we know is that when we are exposed to something, we become less afraid of it.
Oh, that's true. I feel like we've had this conversation where most people just have never been exposed to gay people or
they think they haven't.
Or they haven't, yeah. And don't realize that there's nothing different between us.
I think what really shocks me is that some people don't think that their own kids could be.
Or the one that if they are, they would not like their kids. And you're just like, wow, that's weird.
Tragic, yes. Yes. So a new analysis of key findings, new analysis found that, this is their new study, no evidence for retreat from marriage, so marriage is going strong. In fact, there is evidence for a possible increase in marriage resulting from legalization of marriage between same-sex partners. And new marriages increased by 1 to 2% among different sex couples and about 10% overall. And the authors found no consistent evidence for increase in cohabitation by unmarried different sex partners, and they found no evidence for an increase in divorce. And among high school seniors, authors found no evidence of a negative shift in marriage attitudes. Seniors were much more into marriage, and they found some evidence of improvement. So the question is, did gays ruin marriage?
Nope.
Doesn't sound like it. Sound like it, just like every other time the gays move into a neighborhood, they just improved it.
They beautify it. Hey, that's where the money is. We don't have kids, so we have money to spend.
Well, some have kids.
Well, some, but most of us, we can plan on the kids.
But more disposable income, that is actually a reality, yes. Okay, that wraps up the show for today. A reminder to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars. Links to the studies on the YouTube page at youtube.com/Dr. Greg. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, hit me up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg, and Brian monitors those too, so you can hit him up too. And this is Dr. Greg and Brian and DJ Sammy G, MVP DJ Sammy G, bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.